everyone, and welcome back to another Tabletop Odyssey video. Today we've got a rather special video for you today. I have been given access to the 4th edition Index of the Untold campaign book by Weird Games, and I've got to say it looks very exciting. Now, I know a lot of other great content creators have been focusing largely on the co-op or PvE mode, as I like to call it. I'm going to be focusing today, however, on the campaign mode. I think it's a really exciting new way to play the game, and I'm going to do a little bit of a how to play campaign mode for you today. So with that being said, let's dive right into the video. So what exactly is campaign mode? So if you've ever played any kind of campaign sort of game, be it the likes of things like Blood Bowl or Necromunda, for example, you'll know that a campaign mode is a series of consecutive games that are connected together where your crew usually gets stronger over time. In this particular campaign mode, we get to fuse two existing keywords together, and your leader gets to level up and gain more actions and abilities as the game goes on. However, should your models die within a game, you risk them getting injuries or being annihilated and removed from your crew entirely. So there is a risk and reward to things. You start off with a lot smaller crews and you gain bigger and bigger as you go on. My recommendation, if you're playing this, I know some of you will be very, very keen off the bat to go for some exciting combos, or maybe just to use two of your crews together as one cool fusion. Think of some nice, awesome flavor for things will be great, but consider being a little bit more conservative in your playstyle, because should your models die, it can be very detrimental and harder to replace. So let's start a campaign. First of all, you have to choose a faction and two keywords. One of these keywords has to be from the faction that you chose, but the other, that doesn't. So, for example, you can take a Arcanist as your faction, and then you could declare, say, Witness as one of your keywords, but you might want to combine that with, say, Experimental, and create an interesting crew from that. You can also hire models from either keyword, and out of keyword or versatile models from the faction that you chose. When you choose your two keywords, all of the models that you hire from those keywords gain the other keyword that you chose as well, meaning that they can access all of those ally-only abilities. My choices, so in this pseudo making my own crew, I wanted to merge the Foundry and Augmented crews together. I thought they had some cool shielded synergy going on, and so I'm going to put them in Guild. My two keywords, Foundry and Augmented, and I wanted to use the Nightmare crew for Augmented, the Lord Galehort model here, and so I kind of thought about trying to create Galehort as a leader of their own. Now, the next step is to make yourself a crew card. Think about what sort of things you want your crew to be able to do. There are 12 different options available, so choosing the right one is important. You can't change it, however, throughout the game. Once you've chosen it, that's it, and they don't do everything, and also they cost stones, so take these things into consideration and make a careful decision on your crew card. There you can choose a crew card that attaches upgrades, that applies certain tokens to models, creates certain markers or more. The one I chose for this crew is the Inhuman Determination ability, because I wanted a nice, sturdy, durable crew that's going to last me through multiple games. And Inhuman Determination allows my non-peon models with either of my chosen keywords to gain the following ability, which allows them when they activate to pay a soul stone to heal 2 and move an inch. This, combined with the sheer amount of shielded and armor I know both crews have access to, means that my models will be hopefully sticking around a lot longer. And also that extra inch move will be able to pump them out of engagement in fights they don't want. Next up, we go and make a leader, and we start off by obviously thinking about what sort of narrative we want behind them and a name for them. So we get 5 archetypes after that, and we decide, do we want our leader to be a generalist, someone who could do a little bit of everything, a talented individual who has more abilities than other choices but slightly weaker back of card, a schemer who has stronger tactical actions, a heavy hitter who has stronger attacks, or a lucky upstart which allows you to attach a piece of equipment to your arsenal for free. Now, equipment are things that you can gain throughout the game to improve your models, etc, etc, and they can be attached to any model in your crew. And the lucky upstart lets you take one from the get-go. Now, I'm someone who likes my abilities. I was thinking more about having a crew that synergizes well, having a leader that kind of works. So the talented individual gives me a model that has defense and willpower and speed of 5, so they're a little bit slow and the stats aren't great. 13 health though is rather decent, but to make up for this I have 2 abilities from an ally or allies of cost 8 or less, a tactical action and an attack from an ally of cost 6 or less. So obviously I wanted a bit of a support model that could still do a number in combat with a little bit of room to get better. Knowing that your attacks that you choose, they don't gain, well, attacks and tactical actions, they don't have any triggers innate. So I thought that getting a good ability off the start was more important. You also get to choose the base size and size of your model, up to a maximum of 4 and a maximum of 50 mil. So I chose a 50 mil and size 3 model to reflect that Lord Gelhor on horse model. I just thought that would be better, but also I guess in a sense of modeling for advantage, a bigger base has a wider effect on your abilities, and a higher size means you can see more things. So what I chose exactly, my 2 abilities that I chose, first of all I took the Guardian model from Augmented's Bodyguard, which allows other friendly models to have cover. I then took excess material, so after this model resolves the walk or charge action, I can discard a card or drain a soulstone to make scrap in base contact, and then gain shielded. This is going to be really useful because this keyword between Guardians and Kang, for example, have a lot of push effects which can knock people into scrap. I then took the attack action metal claws from the Hunters, because they're only cost 6, which gives me a stat 5, 1 inch, 3 damage melee attack, which I will be able to improve throughout the game, but starting on that base 3 was always ideal. I then have the Clear the Way, which I took from Willy as my tactical action, which is an 8 inch TN6 signature action, which allows me to place another ally within range 3 inches of its current position. This is going to be really good at making my models get up the field really quick and compensate for the bit of slower speeds. That being said, I will obviously be able to improve as the game goes on. Onto your crew. Now, when you first start a campaign, you're given 25 script. Now, we use script here because script can be used to buy not only models, but also equipment, pay for things like doctors and more. And you start the game with 25 script, so you can buy models at their soulstone cost. At the start of the game, I believe you can only choose keyword models. Now, when you hire a model, they stay permanently within what is known as an arsenal. And your arsenal is essentially your pool of models and equipment you can choose to hire from at the start of a game. Every model within your arsenal automatically gains the other keyword if they already have one. So versatiles and out of keywords don't, notably, when you do hire them into your arsenal, but models that have one keyword will gain the other. I started with my 25 script and I bought myself a Guardian and a Watcher from the augmented keyword, as well as a Steelworker and Kang from the Foundry keyword. In future though, I will note that it seems more ideal to prioritize less models but with higher cost, because it may be more difficult to gain higher costed and more important models to the overall crew. Will be more difficult to get, especially if you don't gain a lot of script in game. So potentially I would have just focused on getting the Peacekeeper instead of a Watcher and Steelworker, just to have that nice core of strong models that I would be able to hire every game. Now, when you go and start a game within a campaign, you need to generate the strat and scheme pool and deployment as usual. There's no changes here, although I would recommend in future gaining grounds to just use a mix from every gaining ground to make it more interesting. The size of the game, however, is equal to the player with the lowest total model cost in their arsenal plus 6. This means that essentially the player with the lowest total model cost is probably going to have 6 stones available in every game, but not necessary. You may choose a game size that is lower, but not higher. So if we are starting on a 25 script game, I've got 25 stones of models in my crew. If I was to play an opponent of equal, we'd be able to essentially have a 31 stone game. For the battle report that I will be showing later, my opponent actually took only 22 stones worth of models, so we only had 28 stones to choose from. Then after choosing your models within your crew of the soul stone count, you determine your crew rating. Now, the crew rating is equal to the total number of equipment pieces selected, plus any enhancements that your leader and totems have, minus any injuries that your crew possesses. This number may be a negative. Then the crew with a lower campaign rating, crew rating, gains additional soul stones equal to the difference, to a maximum of +3, but it may exceed 6, unlike regular games of Malifaux. Now, sometimes when you're playing a game, things might go a little bit badly for you. Maybe there's a bit of a skill disparity, and because this is a campaign, you don't want to have too many injuries on your models because it will make things harder for you in future. Should you get into a position like this, you may want to consider strategically withdrawing. This means that you will remove all models from the table. Now, if you did a strategic withdrawal on the first 2 turns, you will get no victory points that you scored. You will not be able to barter for equipment. You will not gain an aftermath hand, and you will not earn any script, but you will flip for any injuries already gained as usual. However, if you do it on turn 3 or 4, the other player still gets to keep playing those turns to continue scoring, but obviously you don't have any models to interact with, so some schemes might not be possible. But they can still interact with the strat, for example. Or any schemes that don't require your models. Now, if when you withdrew at the end of the game, if you have less victory points than your opponent, you keep that amount of victory points, and your opponent gets the amount that they have after finishing. However, if you had more victory points than your opponent at the end of this game, say you scored really early on and then you withdraw to cut your losses so you didn't lose any more models, your opponent gains victory points plus 1 of yours. So say I had 6 points and they had 4 at the end of the game, my opponent would actually gain 7 victory points because I had 6, which means that they would count as winning the game. However, you will still get to be able to barter, draw an aftermath hand, earn script, and obviously still flip for injuries. As usual, there are no other changes. It's just how much victory points. Now, sometimes we get something known as annihilation. Now, throughout the campaign, if a model dies as a result of an injury roll, an injury flip rather, or gaining too many injuries, or if an equipment piece is counted as being annihilated because it's a one use only and it gets used, for example, it is permanently removed from your crew, from your arsenal. It's taken away, but you can rehire it as a new model or equipment later on, but you have to pay script for it again. However, if your leader is annihilated, luckily for you, the first time you can just miraculously recover and nothing happens. But the second time, you will have to restart your crew from scratch. You can't have a crew without a leader. If your leader did, however, get removed as having 3 injuries, the third one just doesn't count. You keep the other 2 on the first time. Which brings us to the aftermath phase. Your game is over now, and we get to see exactly how much progress we're going to be making for the rest of the campaign. And we start off the aftermath phase by determining progression and drawing a hand, which you can cheat the other phases of this with. You may not empower with these cards, only cheat. Notably, however, you do not shuffle the deck between phases at all. What you draw is the same. You don't want to have cards that you flip for one phase, reshuffled and reflipped again. So no double black joker, for example. Now, when you draw, you gain 1 card for playing a full game, so everyone who didn't withdraw is going to get at least 1 card, and then you get an additional 1 card for every 3 victory points scored, to a maximum of 3, which gives you 4 cards total if you scored at least 9 victory points. Pretty cool. Now we move on to the payday. This is the first phase of this, and you gain a single script, which you can purchase models, equipment, or hire a doctor with for every 3 victory points scored. And if you won the game, you get an additional script as well. Now, if you were in one of those situations where you are playing against a crew with a much higher CR rating, crew rating than you, you gain script equal to the difference, which should help you hopefully catch up from some of your losses. It can be a good idea to save script for later if there's like a model of a higher cost you want to hire, or if you're expecting injuries, having that extra script available could be important. The next stage is our bartering. So when you barter, you flip a card from your deck, which may be cheated, and you can buy any equipment equal to that rating or have a rating of always available. Things that like always available include, I believe, just a standard gun or sword, and there's a couple of other things I believe as well, or you get what you flipped or cheated. Now, equipment can be equipped to any model within your crew for free once bought, but obviously if it's one use only, it gets annihilated when it's used. Otherwise, it will return to your arsenal at the end of a game and can be used in future games going forwards. So if there's some things that you're just like, actually, some of this always available kit's really good, or this kit might be useful on a model I don't have now but could later, might be worth picking up. If you manage to flip a joker, you do actually have a chance of getting a cool relic, something special, which is a whole table of itself, which is little bit cool. However, I believe if you've already got a relic once in the campaign, you don't get another. Onto the advancement section. So now this is where we start to improve our leaders. Now when you start a game, you actually have to decide for the campaign whether your leader is considered to be a bruiser or a strategist. And this basically impacts how you earn experience points. Now we've got this leadership experience bar below, and the more it gets filled, the more actions, abilities, and so on you gain. Now you gain experience in one of 4 different ways. The first of all is just by playing a game. If you show up, you gain an experience point, which means you're always going to get something. You also gain an experience points for losing the game. So while you might be getting less script for losing, you're going to get more experience, which might hopefully even the odds a bit. You also get an experience point if you are a bruiser and your bruiser leader killed at least 1 model. And if your leader is instead a strategist and if you make at least 1 interact within 6 inches of your opponent's deployment zone, you may also gain an experience. This means you can get a maximum of 3 experience per game, which helps you advance. Now advancements are in 4 different tiers, and when you hit a number on that bar, you get to take an advancement of that type or lower. So say I hit the number 2, I could take one of level 1 or level 2. Now you flip and choose from a value of lower, from the value of the card you flipped or lower than that, and give it to your leader or a totem if you have it. Now tier 1 abilities, they boost your attacks or tactical actions, so they can add things like additional skill, they can add triggers, and things like that. At stage 2, you can gain an extra action or an extra ability. This can be really useful if you feel like you're missing some part of your kit. At stage 3, you gain either a totem from a list of totems, some of which can be quite interesting, others more niche, or you can gain the ability to summon some lower costed models. The summoning restrictions here are pretty tight, so don't be expecting to summon massive models. It's very low costed models, but they're all unique ways. And finally, at tier 4, you get to improve your crew card by adding something that I believe is on either of the keywords you've chosen's original crew cards. I think you get to add some of those stuff onto your own, which could be really useful. And then after you have completed this, you get to visit the doctor. Now notably, the doctor is before the injury flip phase here. So if you really want to save script to use on a doctor for existing injuries before they pick up new ones. This can be annoying. Obviously, if you do pick up an injury, you can't then use a doctor to remove it. Within the same game, you have to wait a game to remove that injury, but it's worth considering. Now this can also be cheated, this flip, and it costs a script per injury on a model. So if your model has 2 injuries, you could pay 2 script to remove 2 of them, or 1 script to just remove 1 of them, and you do get to choose the injury. Now, some of these effects can be quite interesting. I've shown some of them, obviously not all of them, don't want to spoil the whole book. But for example, if you pick up a 1 to an 8, you still keep the injury, so you want to save your high flips for these. But getting something like a 10 or an 11 could turn your model either into a construct or into an undead model, which could be quite funny. Because yes, technically necromancy is a form of healing, or becoming a machination is technically healing. You know, they're still alive, right? And some other things do thankfully remove the injuries, or they can force you to reflip them. Now, the injuries themselves affect only non-peons. Thankfully, peons don't have to pick those up, which would seem a bit ridiculous if they did, but they're really not that relevant. Now, this flip, again, can be cheated, and you must take the effect listed, or the one that you cheated, obviously. Now, I'm going to make this really important. Lower cards are better for this one. Whereas higher cards are better for your equipment and abilities, lower cards are better for injuries. Now, if you gain an injury you already have, you ignore it, thankfully. But if you have 3 or more injuries, your model is annihilated. If you do manage to flip the red joker, you get to flip on a lucky miss table instead, which is a little bit more fun and interesting. But notably, please try and keep your models alive throughout the game, because injuries really suck. I've shown a couple of examples here for the 8, 9, and 10 of Crows or Tomes. You know, not being able to charge or having -1 defense can really suck. But, I mean, missing fingers, having to discard a card or treat all of your signatures as blank, that can really, really suck. So, there's a few others as well of varying degrees of annoyance. Some are stat reductions, some are things like barely holding it together, which reduce your ability to play on the board. So, keep your low cards in your hand to cheat for these. I believe it might be 1 to 4, 1 to 5. You just ignore the injury entirely. So, yeah, keep your low cards. And then finally, when you start a game in the 2nd week onwards, you get to add an additional model to your arsenal before you start the game. And they get to cost script equal to their soulstone, or +1 for out of keywords. But the first model that you hire gets to cost 5 less. So, thankfully... everyone should be able to hire a model of cost 5 or less, regardless if they have no script, or if they want to pay more, they can. Now, notably, you can purchase more than one model, but you must purchase at least one model. Okay? Now, of course, the more you saved, the better models that you can hire. If you end up with more victory points, you end up, say, 6 script left over, you could hire a model of cost 11 or less, which is really good. Obviously, you might want to save some of that for equipment or for paying a doctor, but regardless, having script available increases the quality of models you can hire, or at least the quantity. Yeah. This brings us to the end of the video. I hope this was a marvelous rundown and a nice little insight into the new campaign mode going forwards. I found it really exciting, and I have a battle report coming for you up next, showcasing off a first game of a campaign mode, so you'll get to see firsthand exactly how my game unraveled, and how it kind of functions. It's great me just talking about it, but seeing exactly how it unravels can be a little bit more insightful, and I can give my first-hand feedback of what I thought about it then. With that being said, I'm really, really thankful to Weird for giving me an insight into this book. Please make sure to pre-order a copy of Index of the Untold if you are interested in playing this game mode or the cooperative game mode available. They're both really cool, and either way there are some great stories in there, so even if you just want to pick it up for the lore, that's definitely a viable option too. This could be a great way to grow your communities going forwards, and maybe start at some points games that are a little bit lower. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.